Okay, so I think I'll just start it now. You're all very welcome to the Burn Bio Wednesday webinar. Um, and I'd like to welcome Rachel McKenna as well. And thank you very much for doing this webinar for us. So, Rachel, I'm just going to read a bit about Rachel herself. She's a dedicated naturalist who has spent the last 5 years passionately observing, recording, photographing, and drawing a diverse range of Irish wildflowers, insects, and mammals. Um, she actually works as a senior executive architect in County Offaly and is the author of 3 books on architecture. So, Step into Nature is a new kind of venture, and it's a week by week Irish nature diary that serves as a personal invitation to explore the wonders of the natural world. Author and naturalist Rachel McKenna guides readers through every season, showcasing the fascinating wildlife surrounding us, from the vibrant fungi of January to the intricate ecosystems of old stone walls. So it sounds like a brilliant piece of work, and I'll let Rachel go on from here.
Thanks very much. Do you want me to share the screen now?
Yes, please. Yeah,
Excellent.
go
We'll give it a
ahead.
go. That okay for you now?
Yeah, we can see that.
Great. So thanks very much, Elva, for that introduction. And thanks very much to the invisible participants for attending this evening. It's great to have such numbers signing in for this. So the book is called Step into Nature. And as Elva mentioned, my name is Rachel McKenna. I work in Offaly County Council, and this really is a different area for me. And it all sort of began about 5 years ago. I've kind of described it as being a personal awakening and an appreciation of the astounding beauty of nature around us. And that's what really has come out over the 5 years. It's sort of developed from a general awareness to a thirst for more information. And this would really be helped by the patient experts on Facebook pages and a key selection of wonderful books. So some of those Facebook pages would include MothsIreland, Insects and Invertebrates of Ireland, and British and Irish Sawflies. In fact, I only joined Facebook just to get onto those different pages. And the experts on that will come back and validate any of your photographs if you put them up and give you IDs if you have trouble figuring out what the different things are. So I would have used that like a huge amount over the previous 5 years to try to figure out what all these wonderful insects were, and then also the Wildflowers of Ireland website to figure out what the different plants were. So the book itself is set out as a weekly diary, and it provides a chronological view of the finds we can hope to look out for in the weeks and months ahead. And it's particularly designed to cover flora and fauna generally found in the garden or on local walks. And that image there is of a beautiful hawthorn shieldbug, and she's just laying her eggs on the underside of a rowan leaf, actually, in Bird Domain. So the book itself is based on the publications of the 18th, 19th, and early 20th century by a range of nature writers. You can see one of the earlier ones will be Gilbert White and Fabre. Then you have Brimble, Edward Stepp, or Anne Pratt. And many of these, like this one here by Edward Stepp, will be books that fit comfortably in the palm of your hand. And Stepp had a wide range of books. Some of them dealt with particular topics like trees or wildflowers, or insects, and then some were more of pocket guides like these ones, which covered flora and fauna as they appear throughout the year. And this book then, Step into Nature, seeks to emulate that undertaking, but in an Irish context. And it highlights the vast range of incredible species that we can find locally within Ireland. And that's the huge difference, because many of the publications which are based in and around England, we wouldn't have a lot of the flora and fauna that they would have. And while predominantly set in Offaly, most of the highlighted species can be found throughout Ireland. So each plant or insect that is within it was recorded on the National Biodiversity Data Centre. And that's hugely significant because it assists with national monitoring. It's the data centre is wonderful. They've a great range of workshops. I would have attended many of those. And they also have kind of reading guides and little courses that you can take online as well, a great source of information. And my own records over the last 5 years were used to compile the book. So as I said, it's laid out as kind of a weekly diary. So that's just a look there at November week 1. It looks at some mammals, so it's looking at fallow deer. And it also then looks at some of the galls that you can find on our trees. So that's 3 that are made by a gall wasp, different wasps, and they're on to be found on the oak trees. So you can see the smooth pea gall at the top. And that's a kind of laid at the end. The eggs would be laid at the end of kind of buds. They can be laid in the midrib, like in the center, or they can also be laid within the acorns. And as they grow, it causes the leaf or the acorn to distort around it. Some of them have single chambers, some of them have more than one. So just a great variety, those to look out for as well. Somebody was saying this time of the year is really like the 3 M's. You're looking at mushrooms, mosses, and moths. So these are some of the mushrooms to be found. If you look often at fallen branches that will be down within the leaf or mulch or moss at the base of trees, you'll come across some of these items. So the top one there is known as lemon disco. And you can get swarms of that along the branches. A lovely little one to find. And then purple jelly disc, that's kind of cushion shaped, a lovely pinky purple colour, and they're found among rotting deciduous trees, especially beech. And the bottom one there, you'll find that, sure to find that in your garden as well as in woods. It's often on hazel trees. It's known as coral spot, just little raised spots along the branches. This is one of the wonderful corals. This is a form of upright coral, and you can see where they get their name because it really does give the appearance of an underwater seascape. And this one, you can see that it has long, smooth, dense branches that repeatedly subdivide as they grow, and they grow on decaying timber or mulch on the forest floor. That one was found in Kinnetty Domain. So some of the other ones that can be found in grasslands, such as the beautiful grasslands that you have, there's many, many wax caps found throughout the burn. This particular one is known as the parrot wax cap, and it kind of varies in colour from green to orange to yellow. And I'm particularly fond of this one because I discovered it a number of years ago at the base of an old ash tree in the garden. Very, very low, as I mentioned there. It always seems smaller each year than previously remembered because you take photographs, and all the photos here and in the book are just taken with the mobile phone. But when you look at the photo in detail, you forget the actual scale of the item the following year. So that's why all of the pictures will be numbered with the size of the item, whether it's a mushroom or a bird or, an insect, and where it was found and the time of year that you can normally find them. That also shows then fibre caps, which you can get in different colours. You can get them in white or in lilac, and many of those again found in the garden. This was a beautiful Ichnum moss, a wasp that I managed to come across in November. It was just resting on the hedgerow, and you can really see there its very characteristic narrow waist that these wasps would have, and it also has exceptionally long antennae there. Some of them, and this one in particular, up to 16 segments. So there's very much a difference between male and female. Females have brown legs and brown stripes on the abdomen, whereas this beautiful male has yellow legs and a mix of white, yellow, and orange stripes on the abdomen. So with regard to the moths, I would have in the last number of years got a loan of a moth trap from our heritage office, and I'm not sure if I'm sure you've come across those or had talks about them before, where you put them out at night. It's a small box with a light. The moths are attracted to it. They kind of fall into the box below where you would have egg cartons, and they fall asleep in the egg cartons. And the next morning, as I always described, it's like Christmas morning where you open up the moth trap. You never know what you're going to have, and you just record what you have there, working with MothsIreland, getting them verified, and you can let them all go then the following morning. So some of the different species in the book, we would look at them in greater detail, just looking at the whole life cycle, which can be incredibly interesting. So you might find the beautiful adults here. You can see their fabulous autumnal colouring in the feathered thorn, where they blend in so well with fallen beech leaves. And then you would also take a look at their eggs, which are laid. You can see they're these beautiful olive green legs with a delicate speckled ring at the top. and they're laid in batches along a branch like that. And then in broadleaf trees, hedgerows, and gardens. And then they have purple grey to brown larvae, which appear in April to June. And what's really interesting about, researching the book and reading up on any of these, you wonder how you can go about finding them. So it might be easier to find the eggs, because as you can see there, it mentions that these particular larvae feed at night. And a lot of time that's for safety. There's less predators out at night time. And then they pupate just below the ground. So something else that we can find around this time of year are some of the kind of remaining leaf mines. And leaf mines can be made by moths or sawflies or flies, beetles as well. And an egg is laid somewhere within the leaf. In this case, it's laid at the petiole, just where the leaf meets the stem there. Sometimes it can be laid on the midrib, above or below the leaf. Then whatever it is, if it's a moth, it can mine between the two layers of the leaf. Some of them cause a fold, some of them spin the leaves. But this particular ectodermia, this is on aspen, it can induce these green islands, and that's a wonderful way of finding them. So you actually see these on the fallen leaves on the ground. And if you pick it up and hold it to the light, that's always the best way to look at a leaf mine. You can see on the top circular picture there, the little black mark inside the leaf is the frass, or the poop from the caterpillar or the larva inside. So they work symbiotically with bacteria to artificially extend their season on the fallen leaves. And the larvae overwinter in cocoons and pupate the following spring. So another range of insects that we can find this time of the year are stoneflies, which are an incredible group of insects. You can see they're over 250 million years old. There's 3,500 species worldwide, which is just phenomenal, and there's up to 20 in Ireland. So the one on top there, that's Luctra. So that can be found from April to November. So they have a good long lifespan. They're found in freshwater habitats, streams, rivers, and lakes. They can often be used as an indicator of the quality of water. They also favour canals, turloughs, ponds, and reservoirs. And you'll often find them resting on leaves in many places around the burn. And they're often very fond, like all of us, of a bit of sunshine, and they will bask in the sunshine on leaves. And then while the adults are found on land, the larvae are found in the water. And the nymph stage, incredibly, as in some insects, can last for just 3 to 4 months, or 3 to 4 years in some cases. And you can see that the nymph there in the water has 2 tails, as opposed to the mayfly larva, which is 3 tails. So this is another adult. And what's really unusual about stoneflies is that they have this unique system of drumming, which they use to find a mate. And each species has its own patterned beat. So the males drum the rear and the females answer from afar. And with constant drumming, they close the distance until they find each other. It's incredibly romantic. And once the female mates, she does not drum again. And after mating, the males then guard the female to ensure that another male doesn't come along and mate with her. So December, we can start to look out for these gorgeous little jelly baby fungi, which pop up at the base of beech trees. Now they're not very tall. They're only about 6 millimeters, and they just grow up out of the moss, so it can be hard to spot them. And it's well worth having a good look for them. And they vary in colour from ochre to orange to olive green. Gorgeous looking. Something else that we can definitely find throughout the year on holly leaves, it's the only holly leaf miner, and that's a gallfly. And it lays its egg along the midrib of the holly and along the centre, and you can see the red spot there. And they're laid in the early summer or late spring. And the larvae then slowly work through the midrib. It takes them 3 months to get through 5 millimeters, and they molt in December. They then turn and work their way through the leaf on either side of the midrib, and they form a blister. But what's really incredible about this particular gallfly is that the adults manage to get out of the tightly packed pupa that was formed by distending a bladder-like protrusion on the top of their head, and that bursts the outer shell of the pupa. But they wouldn't be able to get out of the actual leaf itself because, they're very kind of waxy and hard. But the leaf has already had a pre-cut hole by the larva. So before the larva pupated in the cocoon, it already made a hole in the leaf for the adult fly to escape through, which is just incredible that that's all goes on inside a little holly leaf. Somebody else who's very fond of that holly leaf leaf miner is the blue tit. So they've discovered them as a little source of food, a small snack, and you'll often find a kind of a V-shaped slit in the holly leaf, and that's what the blue tit makes with its beak, just as a little slit, and takes out the larva and heads off with that for its snack. So around, from kind of in December, it's a good time of the year to maybe put out some clean seeds or nuts, and it's a great opportunity, if we do, to see some of the smaller birds that feed on those. You'll find the great tit in the first picture, the coal tit in the centre, with the cranky greenfinch, as I always call them, behind. They're not very fond of having anybody else in the bird feeder and usually chase them off. And the only reason, of course, they look cranky is because they've got very dark area around the eyes, so it always makes them look like they're frowning. And you might come across then the lovely little dunnock. I thought for years they were just a sparrow, but they've got a more muted grey-brown colour. And they're very shy and cautious, and they feed close to the ground, so it is difficult to see them. There's the very sociable and brightly clad goldfinch. They're very happy to feed together on your feeder, so you'll have no problem spotting those. And then the gorgeous little wren. Of course, everybody loves the wren with its little upturned tail, which flits around in the vegetation. But what I think is wonderful about those is that the male makes several domed nests in various locations, say around your garden, and it brings the female to each of them so that they can make their final selection as to where they're going to lay the eggs. So a quick look then at the crow family. The raven, obviously the largest of the family, is 55 to 65 centimetres long. Plenty of those around, up overhead as you're heading, say, towards MacDua's Cave. You'll always hear the incredible call of the raven up around that area. So they're described as a shy species. They pair for life, and they breed in predominantly uninhabited uninhabited woods or around cliff edges. So the rook there you can see is significantly smaller. It's got a kind of a bluey purple sheen. It's just around 46 to 47 centimetres. And then we'd obviously be very familiar with the jackdaws, and they would often feed and fly with the rooks and forage with them. And they're quite noticeable with their kind of ice blue eyes. They feed on insects, slugs, berries, fruit, and occasionally eggs. And then the hooded crow, which is similar in size to the rook, you can see there it's about 45 to 50 centimetres. Now, as I mentioned before, all of the photographs are taken just with the mobile phone. So my photos of anything in the distance, birds, anything like that, absolutely shocking. They're all just a blur. So I ended up having to do kind of these small drawings just to be able to highlight those in the book as well. So something else that we can find this time of the year, which I always find a little bit unusual, would be ladybirds, because they seem so delicate and petite, and yet they're very hardy, because the adults live through the winter, within our gardens, our hedgerows, or in our parks. So the one on the top right there is a 22 spot. It's the yellow ladybird. And its only similar or confusion species would be the 14 spot. But it has kind of 14 rectangular spots on its back. And all of the rest of the images there on that page are the 10 spot ladybird, which are incredibly varied. Now you can see, just even in terms of feeding, this is why, everybody should love to have a ladybird in their garden, because they feed on aphids. But the 22 spot also feeds on powdery mildews, which I think is incredible. Something else that we can find all year round, but it's a good one to focus on at this time of the year, is the earwig. And there's actually over 2,000 species of earwig worldwide, while we have 3, but predominantly it's the common earwig. You can tell the male and the female apart, as the male have curved forceps to the rear, which are longer than the straighter female version. And they're actually used for defense, to try to scare off predatory insects. So they hibernate over the winter and they emerge in the spring. They have a nest or a brood chamber with batches of 30 to 50 eggs. And the eggs and the early nymphs, when they hatch, are guarded by the mother until she dies in brackets, and then they eat her. So it's a cruel world out there. So they molt 5 times until they're fully mature by July. So they're described as shy nocturnal omnivores, eat on a range of different things, and they live in loose bark during the day. But what I found incredible about something like a common earwig is that they actually have wings. And not only do they have wings, but they're incredibly beautiful and have this highly sophisticated fan-like triple fold manner so that they can tuck away and fold into their back. So they fold, you can see on the screen there, they start to fold from the base where it says A. So they fold from the outer edge inwards like a fan. Then that folds up in half, which is B, and then it flips around to the back at C and tucks in into their backs. So the end of the year in December, I had it all set. It was going to end with the magnificent December moth, which I had never found. And you can see it's magnificently dressed for cold, frosty nights. They're found in woodland, hedgerows, and gardens across most of Ireland. So as I'd never found one, I said I'll do a drawing of it. And I had just mentioned to somebody, to our biodiversity officer, that I'd done the drawing of it. And he said, sure, stick the trap out tonight. It's a great night. You might come across some, and found 4 the next morning around the trap. I couldn't believe it, but still put the drawing in anyway. But I was just saying, we still have to look for the larvae. Have never come across that yet in the garden. So we'll just take a look now at some of the other items then that we can look at throughout the year. That's just an image of Cologne Bog in the winter, the absolutely beautiful location, which I'm fortunate enough is very close to me. So what can we look out for the rest of the year? Some of the wildflowers, there's obviously a fabulous selection throughout the country, and these then will be shown on a week-by-week basis. So it's just showing you kind of a selection of the year's worth here. So obviously the snowdrops, the beautiful winter aconite at the start of the year. We all look forward to seeing the beautiful blackthorn in our hedgerows. There's few sights more beautiful than a swathe of wood anemones under trees. And then the very unusual lords and ladies. They have a wonderful life cycle, very interesting plant. And then the beautiful cuckoo flower. We always know when we see those that we're going to hopefully see the orange tip butterfly coming along shortly, which feeds and lays its eggs on the cuckoo flower. Then the fabulous bee orchid. Obviously, so many spectacular orchids in the Burren, and I've been fortunate enough to get wonderful examples of the bee orchid there as well, and in our own county in Offaly. Then the bog asphodel, and the beautiful grass of Parnassus. I really think it's one of the most beautiful flowers. It has these sort of waxen petals, and it is found in places like it's in Abbey Hill. You can find it going up the hill there. It's found opposite MacDua's Cave, heading towards Eagles Hill. And the beautiful autumn lady's tresses there. Again, a fabulous looking orchid, which was found around Ugmama as well. And then 2 Burren specialities. I said I'd put them in anyway, even though they're not in the book, because they're just too specialised. So that's the incredible looking fly orchid, and the beautiful spring gentian with such a vibrant colour is always such a treat to find. So we can then look at some of the different types of ladybirds. There's the pine ladybird, first recorded in Ireland in 2014. So it's always fantastic if you can find something that hasn't been recorded in your own county before. And the pine ladybird, you can see, is these kind of hook marks in red to the sides and just 2 red spots at the back. And then the heather ladybird, which is even more difficult to find, has this kind of reddish pattern across the back. There's slight variations in both of those. Others include the much larger eyed ladybird, which is absolutely beautiful. You can see the scale of it compared to the 14 spot just beside it. And also beside the 7 spot ladybird, which is kind of our standard one. And that's the pupa there down at the end of the eyed ladybird. Others include the orange ladybird, found one of those just last week. So as it says, they're out and about all year. They've the lovely kind of like a clear visor there across their eyes. And the cream spot ladybird then below with the sort of black fringed spots on its back. And then the hieroglyphic ladybird, I've only found one of those. Their larvae, they actually feed on the larva of the heather beetle. So they do need to be found in kind of, they do need to live in kind of damp places where you've got heather. And this was found in a small birch tree just over the heather. And just a word of warning, when you're taking photographs, always take a photograph from a distance. You know, especially things like dragonflies, because they'll flit away as soon as you come near. But any kind of ladybirds, or a lot of the beetles, in fact, and that's what happened here. They have this wonderful kind of reaction. The minute you touch the stem, they drop to the ground and you'll never find them again. So it's a great defense mechanism for them. And that's what happened with this one. So I had one blurry photograph just before it fell to the ground, much cursing going on in the background, and had to do a drawing of it instead. So I had mentioned before about the kind of complexity of some of the life cycles, and this really highlights one of them. So this is the 14-spot ladybird, and it's been parasitized by this particular wasp. So the wasp comes along and lays an egg inside the underbelly of the ladybird and kind of paralyzes it. So it stays pretty much stationary and sort of almost shuts down, but is still alive. And the egg then hatches within the ladybird, and it takes about a month to mature. Then it emerges and pupates in a cocoon, which is attached to the ladybird's leg, as you can see there in the picture. And this was just on a leaf in the garden. So, you know, you can tell that that is that wasp that has emerged by the very neat little opening on the cocoon. Because what's even more unusual then, sometimes it can be hyperparasitized, where another parasite will come along. It knows that the egg of this particular wasp is inside and can lay an egg within inside it. And if that is the case, you will have multiple openings coming out of the cocoon where all those hyperparasites burst out through the cocoon. But in this case, it shows the lovely neat opening, which allowed the adult wasp emerge. So then some of the great variety of butterflies that we have, you can see the beautiful, the large brimstone there, which there's 2 generations. So you can be fortunate enough to find those from March through to November. Just saw one, you know, a couple of weeks ago as well. Then I mentioned the orange tip on the cuckoo flower, and you can see it there. That's the male with the actual orange, and the female beside it just has the green marbling. Then the green veined white, the small white, the wood white, the dingy skipper, and a lovely peacock. And they're just images then of the red admiral, the common blue, and the beautiful green hair streak. It's always it's great to find one of those. You really have to sneak up on those because they fly off so quickly. They're very difficult to see while they're flying because this sort of browner kind of colouring on part of their wings. So as they're flying, it's difficult to see them. But on a sunny day, they'll often stop and rest on the plants, either on the bird's foot trefoil or on the gorse. And that's the little small copper there. So I just put in this one, even though I haven't come across any in Offaly, but this is the brown hair streak, which I've been fortunate enough to find a few times in the Burn. That one was in Gertleca. And I'd mentioned about the life cycles, and in March just gone by, went out looking for the eggs. Following a kind of conference in the Cusack Centre by MPWS. Jesmond Harding spoke there, and he's this wonderful The Irish Butterfly book, where he details the whole life cycle of each butterfly. And any sources like that were used for this book are all mentioned at the back of the book for each week. So the further reading is mentioned. So he would have highlighted how you can find the eggs for the brown hair streak on kind of on blackthorn stems. So it's kind of like a little sea urchin. You can see it there. So I was absolutely delighted to find that one in Gertleca after a lot of searching. And it's on kind of young stems of blackthorn, and it was around the area where we'd found the brown hair streak earlier on that year. So then just looking at other life cycles, this is the marsh fritillary. They fly from May to June, and the female lays batches of yellow eggs on the underside of devil's bit scabious. What's unusual about these is that when the eggs hatch after about a month, the larvae spin a communal nest, and they feed and move in this nest as they grow and develop through the stages. And this is to try to keep them safe. So by early October, they've moved to fresh plants, and they will overwinter beneath that vegetation. And towards the end of February, the spiny larvae, you can see them there, have sufficiently warmed up to become active again. And they pupate then into these dramatic white cases with black and yellow markings. So we'll just look at a few of the moths then. This is the poplar hawk moth, a lovely big one with very shiny brown. Now those three were found in a moth trap. That's why they're kind of positioned together. I just popped them onto a tree where they would stay for a while and maybe fly off later on. So you can find those between May and July. And then they have huge larvae. You can see the big green larvae there munching away on a willow leaf. And you'll find those between June and October. This is the fabulous fox moth. That one was actually found up near Cahercamon. A beautiful, very luxurious looking, it's kind of really soft looking adult moth. And you'll find those between May and June. And what I think is so funny, it says that the moths fly in the afternoon sun as they search for females, whereas the females actually only fly at nighttime. So you can see their eggs there. They're sort of glossy, buff-coloured eggs, which are laid in sticky batches along plant stems. And the lovely-looking hairy caterpillar on the image on the bottom left there. So the puss moth is another incredible moth, and one that it's well worth trying to look out for, the different stages. I've kind of described this one as looking like Viennetta ice cream with the beautiful folds and ripples of a darker colour on the white background, and then these kind of gold streaks running down through it. And in fact, that one was found. I had the moth trap out and had gone through the whole trap, emptied everybody out, sent them all on their way, and was just packing up to go when I spotted this guy on the branch of it, or on a tree trunk beside the trap. So it hadn't gone in, but had been attracted to the light and just settled on a tree beside it. And that's the only time I've come across one in the garden, and I've never come across the larva in the garden. And you'll see now on the next slide why you might want to look out for them. So this is the amazing larva of the puss moth, at one of the final instars. They're very, very large. They start out as a tiny little black caterpillar with two long straight tails. And and you can see the tail there in that larger middle image has turned kind of black and white. But when it's startled, or when it's trying to shake off or scare off predators, it rears up the tail and releases these two filaments. So they're like two red ribbons from the end of the tail, which it flicks away. And you can see the bottom photograph there on the left. It was actually flicking. They're like little streamers or ribbons at the back, which it flicks away to try to scare you off. The other great tactic it has is that it draws its face, its head back in, and you can see the shape around it makes it look much, much larger than its actual head is. And it's ringed in red, which is obviously always meant to be a deterrent, and it has like the two big black eyes. And on the bottom half of it, it has a slit in the red there, and it's supposed to be able to squirt acid from it. So I didn't get too close for those photographs. So it has different sets of feet. The ones to the front are quite sharp, and they can hold the stems and the leaves. And you can see it gnaws away, like strips back the leaves entirely, and it's finishing off there by gnawing away on the stem. And the back feet then are kind of circular with little hairs around it. They remind me of like in a carpet sweeper. You can kind of just make them out in that top big photograph. And you sort of wonder how these can possibly hide because they're so large. But the brown in the back almost looks like a shadow and helps reduce them in size. And then the yellow markings, you can see in the last photograph on the bottom right there, blends in absolutely perfectly with the veins on the back of the aspen leaf. So just incredible. Another one there where we had heard that there were This small chocolate tip moth was in adjoining counties. No reason why it wasn't in Offaly and there to be found. Somebody put up that they'd found the caterpillar in a spun willow leaf just at the Burn Perfumery, kind of on the way down. There's a couple of small willow saplings on the way down the driveway. So worth stopping. There's some fabulous plants and insects even along there and having a look. So I went straight out to where I knew there were willows in Tyrone Bog, parked the car, and right beside the gatepost there was a little sapling. And the reason I found it, because you wouldn't necessarily notice that the leaf is rolled up, but there was some of that frass or the caterpillar poop in little brown or black blobs on the leaf below. So it spins the leaf to kind of hide in during the day, or maybe to keep from the heat or from predators, and then it comes out again and feeds at night time. So it's got 2 generations, found a lot of them this in the later half of the year, kind of feeding openly during the day. So I've never come across the adult. You can see the drawing of it there on the top, so I've yet to find that. So another batch of insects to look out for, and very under-recorded in Ireland, are sawflies. This is one of the larger ones. It's called Simbex femoratus. There are only a few records of it in the country, and we went out looking for it, and a couple of months later came across large larvae on a birch leaf. The earlier stages of the larva are very hard to tell apart from others, but when it gets to the stage with the brown stripe rimmed with yellow, you know that it's Simbex femoratus. And often that's the case, that the adults are harder to identify, and that the larva in a later stage or instar can be easily identified. So they're just 2 of the adults, because they have different forms within Simbex femoratus, and you can just see them both there. So fantastic to find those. You actually hear them flying, they're so loud, and they kind of buzz or hum as they fly, and then the weight of them makes the whole leaf sway and sag when they land on it. So this would be a smaller, and these are known as gregarious feeders, where they feed in batches. This is your Europavida, and again you can distinguish this easily as a kind of a late instar when it looks like that, in that kind of form, where it has the stripes on its back and the little dots on the side. The adults are very different, difficult to distinguish. So if I'd put up the photograph just of the top one, I'd be told, yeah, it's a Eura, but we're not sure which one. But thankfully, she came back and landed on the same willow sapling that had grown in our vegetable patch, which has kind of been taken over by saplings now. And she started, you can see in the middle photograph, to oviposit on the leaf. So I knew, first of all, it was a female. And then because she was laying those eggs, I was able to watch them. You can see the little neat rows of eggs laid on the bottom, and they hatched and developed again into the Europavida. So other items would be, or insects to look out for, would be the potter wasp, and there's obviously loads of different types. These are just a particularly interesting one. They build a nest with several compartments. They bring moth caterpillars, store them there paralysed as food for their own young. So they lay 1 egg into each of the compartments, which is then stocked with the caterpillars. Shield bugs, again, wonderful to come across, great range of them, like the hawthorn one at the beginning. Now she was just laying her eggs, she would have flown off then and left them, but this particular one is the parent shield bug, and she is the only shield bug to mind her eggs as they develop. So she will actually hover over those for weeks until they hatch. And when you try and take a photograph, she just kind of moves to one side, and then if you move to the other side, she'll just move to that side. So she won't fly off, she will stay with the young. And you can see the 2 last stages there of their development. There's the final instar on a leaf, where they've stayed through all that development. And then 5 days later, they've reached their adult form and are ready to disperse. And again, they were photographs taken on a leaf in the garden. Another one to look out for, sometimes if you see a birch, you might come across these unusual kind of spiral rolls, cigar-shaped rolls, very complex shaped. There's actually mathematicians who've studied it. She makes, it's a weevil. You can see there the photograph on the top. So she makes an S-shaped incision on the leaf. It's still alive, so they're not cut through. It just comes nearly to the midrib. So it's alive. It's used to both protect and feed her larvae, which later pupate in the ground. It's a great selection of beetles to come across in Ireland. You can see the beautiful tiger beetle, green tiger beetle there. They're fabulous to find, kind of in bogs though. They particularly like the dry peat, make holes in that for their young. Then there's the diving beetle there, the lesser diving beetle, and the drawing of the large grooved diving beetle. Then the tortoise beetles in the centre at the top, a fabulous two-banded longhorn beetle at the bottom, and then the colourful red-headed cardinal beetle and a lovely green malachite beetle. So just some of the range, and again, all done on a week-by-week basis. This is just to show, like, one of the pages would have highlighted this particular four-banded longhorn beetle because it's just so stunning. And that was just on a leaf, birch leaf again, at Tyrone Bog. So the female lays the eggs in dead and deciduous wood, and the larvae then gnaw passageways through that timber and later pupate in the tree. And the adults make an oval exit hole, and they are active during the day. So we'd also look then at caddisflies, and at the start of the year you might come across their cases. So they are live in bog pools, ponds, rivers, and they have a very soft, unprotected larva. So in order to mine themselves in the water from other predators, they make this case around their back. So they make it out of surrounding plants. You can see the one made of reeds there, the little cutout one. It could be made out of twigs, such as the bottom one on a leaf in our garden pond, or it can be made amazingly out of little shells. So that one was made out of bivalve shells just in a bog pool. So the larva was actually still inside that. I just took a photograph of it, put it back in the water. So they form a kind of a hood, and you can see in the bottom one there, they can just sort of crawl out. So they could stay under the hood, but he's just coming out a little bit further. So their head can peep out, and their stronger front legs can help to guide it around the water. So then this is just a mix of some of the adults. Again, you can see you can find them from April to November, and throughout the year. The lovely black one there it's a really shiny, sleek black, and it has these long white antennae and bizarrely red eyes. And then a lovely longhorn caddisfly, which was found at Palace Lake. Then there's a huge range of hoverflies. This is a particularly attractive one, also in the burn, but this one stayed still long enough to get a nice close-up photograph. And you can see this is what's known as a wasp mimic. And there's many of those. Some of them are bumblebee mimics, but it has these beautiful yellow bands and sort of dusky chocolate markings on their wings. Dragonflies and damselflies then, great range of those to be found. They begin as eggs laid in plant tissue or scattered over the water. Their larvae then are called nymphs, and they molt through between 6 or 18 different stages or instars. And they're predators in the water then, feeding on some of the other insects to be found in the water. And when they're ready to metamorphose, they crawl out up the stems of water plants. So you'll often see them on reeds. This particularly one made its way up to an alder leaf that was hanging out with the stem into the water. So the fully formed adult is inside this larval skin, and it can take 3 hours for the dragonfly to kind of unfold its way out of this exuvia. And they're very vulnerable at that particular stage. So one of the first dragonflies that we might see will be the four-spotted chaser. So you can see it there on the top and bottom. And as I've mentioned there about taking photos, definitely take photos of dragonflies from a distance. And as you walk nearer, keep taking them. And you'll often find those resting in the sun as well, and trying to warm up. So that's the four-spotted chaser and the hairy hawker. This is an incredible brown hawker, lovely big one. They're 73 millimeters. That was actually at Gertlecka. It was flying overhead as I was standing wistfully looking up at it, getting a creak in my neck. And then all of a sudden, it landed right beside the little gate into the national park. And it was actually eating something, so it caught something and was munching away. And I had time then to get a lovely close-up photograph of it. And similarly, the common hawker to the right there, I only realised when I looked at the photographs later, it was actually drying its wings. So there had been drops of water on the wings, and you could just see them starting to fall down as I was taking a sequence of photographs. So that's why he was staying still in that one. And then just finishing up with those kind of general images is the banded damsel, and that has a lovely kind of thumbprint on its wing, but this amazing iridescent kind of bluey green colour. And thankfully, there was about 100 photos of that one. That one stayed still to get a nice close up of it as well. So, kind of the summary, and I know you're all extremely well aware of this, and thanks to the wonderful work as well that Bio Trust do to help out. But worldwide, we are witnessing catastrophic biodiversity losses, and that's why it is so vital for each individual or community to help in a small but meaningful way to slow down those losses. We must pay attention to what is around us, record it, tell others, and where at all possible, make efforts to increase biodiversity, as you are doing, in our gardens, workplace, schools, and communities. And what I've really realised throughout this is that each day can provide us with the opportunity to listen to the voice of nature. It will reconnect us and instill us with a sense of fulfillment. By simply slowing down, listening, and observing, we can discover miniature wonders of nature. Wonders which fill us with awe when we learn of their complexities, or those that are so heartachingly beautiful that the memory stays with you long after the seasons fade. And each discovery is a small personal triumph. And such encounters have extraordinary potency. It's been described as compulsive potency, which I think is definitely the case with me. And as I said, throughout the past 5 or 6 years, you really come to realize that a walk in nature of whatever duration allows time for the soul to breathe. And finally, to end with the insightful words of Edward Stepp, who lent a hand in naming the book, he suggests that in finding what we sought, we are almost sure to find in addition something that is new to us. Many thanks.
Rachel, thank you so much. That was just a fascinating talk, and such a huge piece of work you've put together there. I'm in such awe of you. You have such a wealth of knowledge as well, with such detail.
Well, small bits of knowledge, all borrowed.
It is amazing though, amazing piece of work. I just want to welcome anyone to type in any questions. We have one question so far, which I completely agree with. Sharon says that you've great photos, and asks about the phone. What phone are you using, and do you use any attachments for close-ups on?
Um, yeah, I used to have a Samsung, which had great kind of a macro lens on it, and I did for a while get one of the little clip-on macro lenses. And a lot of my earlier photographs of kind of small little plants would have been taken with that. It's easier to use that with a plant because it doesn't move. I find if you're fumbling around with a little clip-on thing and you're trying to head into a small beetle or a ladybird, they nearly always disappear on you before you get to them. So I ended up I'm not sure why, but with a Huawei phone, and it has 3 different lenses on it, so it's great as well.
Okay, great. And I really liked the post moth, the larvae of the post moth. It was like
Mm.
something from Alice in Wonderland. It was
Yeah, they're
amazing.
absolutely stunning. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. Like when I had read the bit where it said that the slit in the bottom of that kind of, the bit that outlines the head,
That's the
that's
acid.
supposed to squirt acid.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, but I didn't want to go too close to it either. But it's the different stages, and it's the fact you wonder when you see it, you think, how could I possibly have nearly missed that?
yeah, yeah.
When you actually start to focus in, and that is what it's all about, is about, slowing down and looking. And then you start to see things to look out for. So I
Mhm.
realized, when you step back, you realize the branch that it was on, the entire branch all up above it was stripped of its leaves. So that can often be a
Wow.
way to look out for them,
Yeah.
and that was on an aspen leaf. So maybe look out for ones with young leaves.
Mm.
They obviously, it's like ourselves. You don't like a really old hard cabbage or something. You prefer something that's soft and easier to eat, and they'd be exactly the same. But yeah, if you turn away for a second, that's why I remember somebody saying that, like, don't take your eye off whatever it is you want to take photos of.
Yeah.
Because if you turn away for a second, they can just disappear from view, even though they're still there. It's amazing.
Um,
Masters of disguise.
as we wait for any other questions, I don't know if there will be, but I have a question myself. You have such a wealth of knowledge on such specific species. Did you have that before the 5 year study of for this book, or was that just as you went on, you learned as you went on through the 5 years?
No, I mean, I would have been very interested in the garden and gardening, always was. My mum has a wonderful garden. She put anything with a little water feature anywhere she could find. It could be a tub, it could be a pond, it could be anything. So, but it was really about 5 or 6 years ago that I started to kind of think, oh, that bumblebee is different to this bumblebee. And I actually took part in some of the data center workshops, where they bring you to different areas. And then the following year, kind of attended even more. There were things in the Offaly Field Club events, and then would have read more in books. And then following the Facebook pages, the Insects and Invertebrates one,
Mhm.
people are putting stuff up every day of the week, and then the experts will come in and tell them what it is, and you learn a little bit more then when you read up in your book, whichever book is relates to it. So that's why you're kind of building up little bits of knowledge, and that would have been one of the reasons for trying to pull it all together into a book, because I always admire when people can say, oh, the bee orchids are going to flower next week, or the fly orchid will be out, or the spring gentian, and
Mhm.
I can never remember what time of the year I should be looking out for them. So I thought, well, look, at least if it's set out in a simple kind of manner, you can just check what should we look out for next week, and then you kind of get an idea that maybe they're out to be there to be discovered.
And this is the first of its kind in Ireland, isn't it? There's nature diaries for Britain, but this is the first real Irish nature diary, season by season.
Yeah, I mean, there have been some that kind of some would deal more with the particular type. Some of them are more wildflowers. Some are, so I'm sure somebody will turn around and say, like, there are nature diaries, but this particular one, I kind of wanted to do it in a kind of a straightforward manner,
Mhm.
week by week, and really cover a broad range,
Yeah.
because some of them are just amazing. Like my very first query in 2018 was about a shield bug on the clothesline. And then, I don't know, can you see that there? I ended up, my
Oh yeah.
sister
That's
made me a silver shield bug
wow.
for a birthday present. So that just shows how everybody thinks I'm loony at this stage, where you start getting presents like that.
Wow.
So it's incredible to go from, and you see, you're looking at wildflowers first, and then you see these amazing insects landing on them.
Yeah.
And then, when you find them in one form, you want to find the other form,
Yeah.
so you might find a caterpillar and you think, what's that going to be when it grows up?
Yeah.
So
And each
there's
stage
always
is
something to find.
it's so different. It's yeah.
Yeah.
We have another question here, which is actually very important because it would be a great Christmas present as well. I think I might even get it for myself for Christmas. Um, Catherine missed the start of the presentation, but where can the diary be bought? So where can she buy the diary?
Well, it's distributed by Mercier Press, so you can Google them, but it should be in, as they say, all good bookshops. So if it's not in your local bookshop, you can ask for it, and they should be able to get it in.
And
Um,
do you have the book beside you there just to
Yeah, I do indeed. So it is small, pocket
Right.
sized, and the idea is that you could just have a quick glance at it, before you go out on a walk, see what you might be looking out for that particular week, or you can pop it in your glove compartment in the car. So there's all sorts of different things to look out for, whether it's plants, whether it's mammals. Oh, is that the grass? No, that's a tiny little fairy flax. So yeah, and the reason it's that size is, as I said, it's based on kind of the old-fashioned ones. That's our Edward Step. And I just love the idea that it's something that you can fit in your hand, that you can pick it up and read it at any stage,
Mhm.
and you can bring it around with it. You can pop it in your bag or whatever and bring it on a walk with you. So while it's small, it's got 400 and something pages, 432 pages, and as somebody says, and there's 21 pages in the index, because
Wow.
I always think a good index is really important in a book. So, because I can't necessarily remember the names of things, so they're kind of done under individual names or by type as well. So they're done by ladybird, or they're done under, orange spot as well. So that hopefully it'll make things easy for people if they're trying to remember the name of something or find out when to find it.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much, Rachel. If there's no more questions, I think we can leave it there. But yeah, an absolutely amazing piece of work. I will definitely get my hands on a copy of that book. So thank you so much for that talk. And
No problem at all. And I should probably just have highlighted, while it's 16.99, I think, to buy, that I had mentioned that to you earlier, that
yeah,
all proceeds or any remaining proceeds go back into heritage projects in the county. So that's one of the reasons for doing it. It's just to
yeah,
kind of get the information out there as much as
great.
possible.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for the invitation to attend this evening. And it was great chatting with you.
Thanks a million, Rachel. And thank you everyone for attending as well. Good night.